One of the things that help when you fundraise, for example, from investors is have founder market fit, kind of the why you. Find that real compelling story. Like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you so excited about this? Why do you wake up every morning and like do this? I told you my story of, that kind of personal issue that I have building an app in XR world specifically for medical, and that I needed some storage solution for that. So I had that problem personally and professionally, and I said, I'm going to solve it. I'm going to build a startup that solves that problem. It's really hard to build applications. It's really hard to update them. It's really hard to kind of like add seasonal content and whatnot. Usually you have some AR experience, you open it up. If you open it today or tomorrow, it's going to be exactly the same thing. But that shouldn't necessarily be the case, So we kind of identified this problem around kind of updating content and managing content. And that's where we decided, okay, we're going to build Echo.
Hi everyone, welcome to the All Things XR podcast. In today's episode, I have Alon Grinshpoon, CEO and co-founder of Echo3D, again on the All Things XR podcast. It's the second time I've had the pleasure to have Alon Grinshpoon, CEO of Echo3D. Hi Alon.
Hi, how's it going? So good to be back again. So good to see you, and thanks for the invite.
Thanks very much, Alon. Welcome back. So, Alon, can you introduce yourself to the audience of All Things XR podcast and tell us a bit about your company, Echo3D?
Sure thing. So I'm Alon, from the team at Echo3D. We're a cloud solution for 3D digital asset management, which basically means that we're a fancy organizational Dropbox for 3D models, animations, interactive content, and digital twins. And we allow enterprises and industrial use cases, oil and gas, energy, e-commerce, art, gaming, you name it, to use 3D content effectively and share that across their organization.
Awesome. So a bit about your background, Alon. What initially drew you to the field of AR and VR, and why did you decide to focus on 3D in the first place?
Yeah, that's a great question. Kind of my supervillain origin story. So I did my master's in computer science at Columbia University, specifically in the kind of the 3D computer graphics AR VR program. That was the thing that kind of projected me towards the world of kind of professionally AR VR. At Columbia, they have a great program that really kind of teaches the basics, and you can kind of play around with a lot of AR VR headsets that they have. I did a really cool project around augmented reality for surgery when we took CT and MRI scans, converted them into 3D, and then allows physicians to basically see the patient's heart floating above them during surgery. It was a great use case, but the problem was that I had to, update assets remotely, had to change assets, recompile the apps, and there was really no solution for me and my team to kind of update the assets remotely, change assets, kind of like share that across our team. And then that's why I felt like, okay, a tool, a cloud solution is needed specifically for kind of asset management, specifically for 3D files. And that's what we've built. Kind of after graduating.
So can you tell us a bit about the origin story of Echo3D? How did you found it, and what was the initial problem that you catched?
Yeah, so we started talking to as many 3D professionals as we can, talking to every person that has 3D or is building applications in XR. And everyone kind of said the same thing. It's really hard to build applications, really hard to update them. It's really hard to kind of like add seasonal content and whatnot. Usually you have some AR experience, you open it up. If you open it today or tomorrow, it's going to be exactly the same thing. But that shouldn't necessarily be the case. If it's some holidays coming up, let's say Christmas coming up, and you want to retexture all your assets to have a Christmas theme, potentially you should be able to do that. The app stays the same. It's just the content that is changing. So we kind of identified this problem around kind of updating content and managing content. And that's where we decided, okay, we're going to build Echo. These solutions obviously exist for images and videos, and we kind of talked about kind of these use cases with a lot of customers, and they all said the same. So they have solutions to manage images and videos. They don't have solutions to manage 3D. And the reasons are kind of pretty deep if you think about it. 3D content in general is a lot bigger. Like file sizes are much bigger. If you scan a 3D room and you want to put it in VR, that scan for the room could be gigs and gigs as opposed to this image that you share with someone. 3D files are very are not singular. An image or a video is one file. In 3D, as we know, it could be a texture, mesh, animation, skeleton. It could be 17 files that you need to stream to AR VR headset. So that's another problem. And another problem is, again, it's kind of the nature of the content. It rapidly changes. It's interactive. Maybe it has an animation. It's something that we don't have in kind kind of in images and videos. So you have like an insane amount of metadata that is associated with the 3D files, basically. And sometimes, specifically in AR, we also see location-based stuff. So something like Pokemon Go, you play around, but specific content exists in specific locations and it doesn't exist somewhere else. And again, you don't have these issues with images and videos. So we really kind of found that a cloud solution is really needed in the world of 3D, AR, and VR, and that's why we've kind of built Echo3D.
Awesome. Awesome. So, what are the use cases right now for Echo? What are the applications that are currently using Echo to enhance their experience?
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of traction in kind of industrial use cases, oil and gas, even e-commerce, gaming, marketing. The qualifier is pretty low. It's like, is your team, does they use 3D? Do they use 3D models? Does your team have digital twins? And that's kind of how we started the conversation. But we're seeing a lot of kind of these industries that I mentioned really mature to the point that they have 3D content. They have teams of artists or kind of data capturers that capture 3D data, and they need a way to store that in their team.
Awesome, awesome. So, speaking of scale and large files, how do you handle those? And can we get a bit dive into the technical side?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of our core technology is around compression, conversion, and delivery of 3D. So that means you take a massive file, or we devised algorithms to kind of compress that down to smaller files you can send rapidly. Conversion allows you to basically play around with file formats. So, for example, Apple Vision Pro only works with USD, USDZ files. You might have SPX files. So how do you use that? So you can upload them to Echo. We will convert that automatically to the formats for the Apple Vision Pro, and suddenly it works automatically. If you're building something with a game engine, they sometimes also have some kind of file-specific configurations. It doesn't matter. You upload anything to Echo, it just works automatically. And the delivery part, so behind the scenes, we optimize the network. So the servers that are sending data are actually physically closer to the kind of users. It's physically closer to the devices that are rendering the assets. And a lot of kind of the network optimization that happens behind the scenes is kind of our work to make sure that the data, that 3D data, is delivered rapidly to your device.
Awesome. So you're also streaming the data, right?
Yeah, it depends on the platform. So sometimes it's streaming, sometimes it's just downloading a file and then rendering that. So it depends on like which render or like kind of end device you're using, but everything goes.
Awesome. So, we hear a lot about 3D generation techniques like NERFs, 3D Gaussian splattings, and etc. for scanning objects or environments. Have you integrated these technologies, and how do you see these technologies can leverage 3D generation?
Yeah, oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, we're so lucky to be in this kind of day and age that there's so much technology to content create. So there's so many ways for you to generate assets, create content with your phone or with kind of like really, really simple tools. So that's something that's really kind of powering us as well. That we're seeing this proliferation of content creation, and people are able to create so much content, and then they need a place to store it or a place to share it. And that's kind of how we see these things. Yeah, we definitely integrated a lot of kind of these new 3D creation tools, kind of the formats. If it's digital twins or NERFs or Gaussian splats, you can upload all of them to Echo and just work seamlessly. And again, just always excited to add more and more integrations. I mean, we're again living in a time that every single week you go on X and see like some amazing new paper and how people are able to capture spaces in 3D. And we're basically trying to play catch up with all these amazing technologies. The more industries leverage these kind of 3D rendering technologies, the more obviously we benefit as well.
So, Elon, how does Echo see AI enhancing the capabilities of Echo3D and the platform itself?
Oh, great question. Yeah, I mean, AI is kind of the buzzword these days, and we kind of embraced it, really embraced it in the sense of like really delivering on high value features that utilize AI for our clients. So we just launched multimodal search for 3D. So usually when you search for 3D models or any content, you're used to just typing text. Let me find something based on this file name. With Echo today, you can actually find 3D files based on not only text, but metadata, images. You can literally upload an image of a dress, and Echo will find you a 3D model of that dress that looks like that dress, or a sketch of a shoe, and it will find you the 3D model of that shoe. You can upload a 3D file and find similar 3D files. You can literally right click a model and say, hey, find me similar models. It's really useful for kind of e-commerce or gaming if you want to find like a lot of avatars, or if you want to find kind of a line of products from the same collection. So you can really find that by literally just right clicking a model. So that's really, really cool. Another thing that we introduced is kind of AI generated tagging, which also helps with search and indexing. So basically you upload something to Echo, the system knows what that thing is and adds metadata to it. So if you upload a 3D model of a car, the system knows what car it is, what brand, what color. It kind of adds that to help you index that file correctly.
Awesome. And on another topic of AI is right now capable of generating 3D assets with a single text prompt or from an image and etc. And we are also recently seeing MCPs integrated into Blender, for example. So Blender is able to create 3D models. How do you see these capabilities and the democratization of 3D asset generation impacts the industry?
Yeah, I obviously love it. The more ways there are to create content and the easier those ways are, the better. Like the ones that you just described, if it's AI generation, literally from a prompt, we're seeing actually amazing things with kind of Google AI Studio. They can literally, hey, upload an image, give me a mesh back, or kind of NCPs that integrate with existing software like Blender or Maya. I think that's incredible. The more you can empower creators to build faster, I think that kind of like basically reduces the fraction, the friction there to basically create content. And in our case, it's great because that means there's a proliferation of content. There's more and more content out there. How do we save it? How do we share it? Where do we index it and stuff like that? So I think that's really, really great. I'm really, really excited to see how easy it is to kind of like create content and how basically developers or creators of XR 3D kind of experiences are just leveraging these tools. I think gamification of experiences is something that's happening rapidly, and all these tools all helping you to basically build content at scale.
Awesome. And speaking of AI models and training these models, as we all know, data is king right now, and Echo3D has lots of data, lots of 3D data with, as you mentioned, tagging, etc. How does Echo3D position itself in this area?
Oh, that's a great question. So we actually worked with some AI companies that used our API or our data set as training data. So imagine that you upload you obviously have thousands of assets. You can kind of store them on Echo. Immediately, our API allows you to separate them to training groups, allows you to basically create different data sets from that data, separate kind of 3D models and their thumbnails, their kind of 2D representations, and then run models on that. Using Echo for kind of AI training makes it super, super easy and makes it like super, super accessible because suddenly everything is available through API, and you can kind of do those training data between ground truth and the generated asset. And again, a lot of the features that we introduced around kind of having that smart conversion between 2D and 3D. So like an image and its 3D model, or vice versa, 3D model, and how do you generate 2D images from that model? We recently added that feature. It's mostly used for e-commerce, but again, now with the AI kind of training, it also kind of comes about that you can take a 3D model, position it in a different angle, different lighting, click a button or run an API query, bam, you get a 2D image with transparent background of that asset. And you can use it for any kind of marketing purpose or any kind of training purpose.
So, Alon, what are the trends you're seeing in 3D, in AI and AR that you are most excited?
Yeah, I really love like the new kind of hardware that's coming up. We saw Google releasing kind of Android XR, and obviously the Apple Vision Pro, and I think just Big Screen just released a VR headset yesterday. So there's like more and more kind of hardware that's being introduced in the market, and specifically Apple Vision Pro and the Android XR. It seems like they're gonna integrate the company's existing kind of AI features. So if it's kind of Apple Intelligence or Gemini by Google. And I'm really excited to see how these devices actually become empowered with AI and become empowered with kind of conversational kind of prompts that I can just ask a Gemini to create something in VR and inject that in the headset. So I think something that's going to be super super interesting. I think that's when you're in a spatial environment and like a spatial experience. using your voice, using kind of like some smart kind of command execution makes a lot more sense than typing something, right? Because it's not necessarily a computer; it's an XR headset. So I'm really excited to see how, again, tools like Gemini and Apple Intelligence will be integrated in all these kind of AR/VR headsets.
Awesome. And how about applications? Do you see any applications recently that you're excited about?
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing, at least that I'm seeing from the bird's eye view that we're getting, but through our product, is that some of the use cases are very kind of low hanging fruits. Like people want to view massive 3D models in the browser without the browser crashing. Easy, right? Like, so for that, you need the conversion, compression, and kind of optimization stuff. Some use case that we're seeing again is that kind of workflow between 2D and 3D. How do you marry these things from both directions? So I already have a 3D model. How do I generate 2D assets with that 3D model? How do I use them for marketing? So I think that's really, really interesting. And yeah, and the fact that everyone has like an AR device in their pocket, the camera is the feed, using those content that you already created from one purpose to another, I think that's also really exciting. That you can always share a 3D model that you have and someone can see it on their phone basically instantly.
Awesome. And Elon, you and I have been in the AR industry for a long time. Yeah, and we are excited about Apple putting out its device, and we all thought that it would be a huge success, and everyone would be talking about AR. But it didn't deliver the expectations. And currently, AR and VR are not on the hype that we expected a few years ago, for example. How do you see the current hype of AI pushing things forward for AR and VR?
Yeah, well, I'm really optimistic. I mean, it's obviously a roller coaster. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse. But I mean, the Apple Vision Pro is a pro device. Like the cost is almost
Hmm.
$4,000. Like it's not something that I
Yeah.
would expect people to buy and like everywhere. Um, and the data kind of shows that yeah, cheaper kind of headsets are still doing amazingly well. The Meta Quest, literally every holiday season, every Black Friday, sold out. People are buying it. So I think it's kind of people expect things to be like really, really consumer ready as fast as we can, but then that's just not necessarily kind of where the market is at. It depends on the price point. It depends on kind of the marketing. I'd also say that I don't know. I think because right now, like social media and everything, we have a lot of visibility and like whatever a company is trying to do, and like it kind of discourages them from doing like riskier moves.
Hmm.
Which is sad because like when we got like the first iPhone and it was like the big thing, and everyone now compares, okay, what's the next iPhone or whatnot. People completely disregard like all the other phone versions that were before that were really hard to build, but we just didn't have visibility to like all the quote unquote failures. Because like they were just like the social media wasn't around, so we couldn't say, oh, like all these phones failed for the Apple to succeed. Now we do have that visibility, so
Hmm.
I'm optimistic. I think at some point we're going to get like the form factor and the headsets that we want everyone to buy. It just takes time, and now we can kind of see a lot of the things that are not working. But it's easy to kind of point out the negatives. But I'm I'm personally really like positive about this because every person that uses, we have like all the AR headsets in our office, for example. Every time someone uses the Apple Vision Pro, they're blown away by how amazing it is and how clear the video and the resolution and the experience. So it's still amazing. Like people love it. It's just hard to commoditize and democratize to everyone. Every time you use the Meta Quest and you play around with it, there's this like such an immersive experience and such a positive experience. So I think it just takes time to build, but I think every person who's using these kind of headsets loves them. So we just need to
Hmm.
get more people into more headsets.
Yeah, yeah, surely. And how do you see the future of content 3D generation in the coming years?
Yeah,
We spoke about AI and all these models. How do you see in a few years we create these 3D assets?
yeah. Well, great question, and also again kind of relates to exactly what we kind of discussed earlier. I think as long as you reduce the barrier to entry, the barrier to creation, I think the better. I think the more time passes, it will just become like a non-issue that you can build really amazing looking 3D assets with just a few keystrokes or through voice. I think that's definitely the way to go. Like you mentioned, all these like AI integrations with Blender and Maya and creation tools. Yeah, great. Like we want to empower the creators to create content as much as they can and then make it just easier and easier and easier. Today, it's almost a given that if you want to find like an image, you can go to any AI chat tool and just ask for an image, and it will find you the image in your
Exactly.
style. Same thing with 3D. It's kind of, I mean, we're kind of waiting for video to be like that. And it's like we're seeing tools, right? I think Google just released a really cool tool for video generation. Next step is definitely 3D, and we're already seeing that
Yeah,
happen. So I'm super, super excited. And we're seeing 3D, but it could be like virtual worlds. Like you can like generate like completely amazing kind of VR worlds that you can kind of explore. And I think that's really cool. We see that in gaming as well, that you could get to the point that you can like generate fully fleshed games.
exactly.
And like vibe coding is kind of the latest buzzword as well, that you can just like through prompts just create really cool games and interact with them. There's also, I saw like really mind-blowing research around generating video frames, like just literally 2D images. So you don't even have to generate the 3D, you just generate the kind of video frames. So if you click next, it
Exactly.
just like, you click something on your keyboard, it just generates the next video frame, which is just an image, versus like fully blown using a game engine. So I think that's kind of an interesting, like, do you need game engines to generate games anymore? I think that's also kind of an interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And that was actually a next question. NVIDIA CEO Jensen says that in future we won't render things; we will just generate things. And you mentioned about game engines and how some models are actually trying to generate games in real time as you interact with the game. So in those cases, there are no 3D models actually. It's just generated, and it's a frame. How do you see this approach and the future it's taking us, where there are no 3Ds? It is all generated in real time.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm super excited about that. The more ways there are to generate like games and environments and 3D assets, the better. Obviously, us as a company that kind of focuses on the storage, we kind of benefit. But I think in general, I mean, like, we want to unlock people's creativity. We want to give people the most amazing tools to build all these incredible things, and again, reduce the barriers of entry. It might be the case that a lot of people want to play around with like, AR VR creation, or like create like this cool VR game. They just don't know how. And like, using a game engine is a lot to ask. But now you can do that with a prompt. Let's go. Now you can do it with AI. Let's go. So I think that's a very, very positive change, that kind of all these kind of creation workflows become just easier.
And how do you see these technologies empowering the metaverse? For example, in today's AI models, you see video models that can change the style of a video, for example. And if you actually take those, and in a few years, they'll be able to generate these videos in real time. How do you see these technologies empower the future metaverse?
Yeah, so I actually saw a really cool recent example on X, where someone basically created like a mini metaverse that all AI generated. It's just like a world that you kind of traverse with your avatar, but then you can jump into different portals, and all these different portals just basically connect you to different games. So other kind of vibe coders who created different games, Levels.io created this really cool kind of flying simulator. So in that kind of metaverse, you jump into it through a portal, and then suddenly you're transported to Levels.io flight simulator, and you can kind of jump back and jump to a different game. Kind of the metaverse becomes your portal to different environments, different games. It's very similar to like the Horizon vision, kind of the Meta Horizon kind of vision of like having this kind of place that you can kind of like jump through different environments. So I definitely subscribe to that. I think that's definitely the way to go. And the more environments there are, the more easier it is to create these kind of different portals to different worlds. Again, the better.
And actually, I'm seeing a future where you actually, for example, you mentioned the flight simulator that got created with vibe coding, and it's very simple, just cubes and etc. As many of our listeners, I'm sure, have seen it. And if you put an AI model that can fine tune that into something cooler or something more realistic, that would make it really, really easier for everyone to create games without actually having 3D assets. And that would unlock creativity a lot.
100%. And also, again, kind of maybe the reverse then exists. Like you're playing a game
Mhm.
and you customize this amazing plane in that flight simulator. And now you want to actually export it out. Like you want to actually save, we created this like custom amazing plane. And now you're in the game, but now you want to save it and you want to store that 3D model, or like generate a 3D model of that
Uh-huh.
plane, and then use it in a different game, or just share
Hmm.
it with your friends. So suddenly the interoperability of content becomes a lot more interesting, and kind of saving a state of 3D content becomes a lot more interesting because a lot of it can be generated on the fly. So I'm definitely, again, if someone who's focusing really on kind of 3D storage, I think that's really, really interesting. That suddenly you can create that content really easily, but then the next stage will be, okay, so now you've created it, let's use it for other stuff. Um, I think it's an interesting thing. You saw that sometimes in fashion brands had kind of when metaverse was kind of the buzzword. You had fashion brands that you can buy a sweatshirt, you scan a QR code, you actually also get like a digital collectible of that sweatshirt that you can use in like Fortnite or some game or something like that.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Like having like the same clothes that I wear in real life, have them manifest in kind of the metaverse or in like a game. Amazing. So I think a lot of the kind of content interoperability is also something that's really interesting, and I think kind of forward thinking
Hmm.
of how content kind of is obviously king. So how do we take content everywhere, and how do we reutilize it, and how do we kind of bring it in different experiences, which is kind of what the
Ex-
metaverse is all about.
exactly, exactly. And that's actually one of the hardest challenges of metaverse. For example, transferring your assets from Fortnite to Minecraft and etc.
Right.
But with AI, it's totally possible, right?
Right, right. And again, with like centralized repositories like Echo, that you can just like upload your content, save it,
Exactly.
download a different version, put it somewhere else. That's kind of the point, right? To like have a centralized repo that you know that you're in full control of your content, and everything that you either create or have access to, you can use and you can search through and you can find. So,
Exactly, exactly. So, speaking a bit about the business side of things, Alon, what were the challenges that you faced in developing and growing Echo in the recent years, and what were the lessons you learned?
yeah. Well, the challenges are always, kind of finding the right stakeholders, around like sales or marketing. Like, how do you kind of like approach the right people? Sometimes, like it's an uphill battle because 3D is so new. So we need to find the people who are adopting 3D, and like where do they hang out, and how do you kind of approach them and kind of solve their problems they have around kind of 3D asset management. That's one kind of obviously big deal. Um, but I think in general, like the thing I've learned, and I think that's kind of an advice that I can share with anyone who's either trying to build a business in 3D or XR and AR, is talk to as many people as you can. Really try to understand people's like problem in the space, get different perspectives on how to even like pitch your idea. Sometimes you have like this amazing idea, you're just not selling it right, like you're not using the right messaging. And if you talk to as many people as you can, you kind of basically just A/B test that messaging, and you see what resonates with people and what doesn't. And sometimes if you ask them to like, I just gave you this really cool idea for a startup, pitch it back to me. Like, what have you heard? And then using their kind of formulation of what they heard, I think is really, really useful. Um, it's really like kind of a place of how do you kind of structure your pitch? How do you structure your messaging correctly?
Awesome. And were there any books or courses that you suggest to our fellow listeners who are looking to enter the market as a founder and found a startup that you found helpful in your journey?
Yeah, there's some books that I would definitely recommend. I think there's one, and Lessons for a CEO, like it's a really short book. I think it's called 10 Lessons for a CEO. That's really short. I probably have it actually behind me on the bookshelf. But
Uh,
so that's one that I would say. Also, like there's so many podcasts like this one, and like kind of like video content out there that you can just like listen to expert talk, again, talk to as many people as you can, listen to as many people as you can. I think that's always like a really good source of information that you can kind of speed run through, right? Because you can just do like, let's listen to a podcast 3 times the speed and try to inject as many content as we can. Uh, so I think that's a really good resource, as well. Kind of all these innovation podcasts and podcasts like this that kind of brings in the right people that know about this space and kind of like give you the insight from the industry. I think that's kind of the easiest thing to do.
mhm. Awesome. And Alan, as of our last question, what advice would you give to aspiring and entrepreneurs looking to enter specifically in the AR and VR market? How do you see the overall market, and what do you suggest them to position themselves in this market?
Yeah, well, definitely really learn to love it. Like as a founder, like if you want to start a company, you really need to love what you're doing because building startup is really hard. And you're gonna wake up every single day trying to pursue your dream. So it better be your dream because a lot of people wake up to their nightmare. So you're fortunate enough to be, again, like someone who kind of loves your space, has like genuinely kind of connects with it. One of the things that help when you fundraise, for example, from investors is have founder market fit, kind of the why you. Find that real compelling story. Like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you so excited about this? Why do you wake up every morning and like do this? I told you my story with kind of, that kind of personal issue that I have building an app in XR world specifically for medical, and that I needed some storage solution for that. So, okay, so I had that problem personally and professionally, and I said, I'm going to solve it. I'm going to build a startup that solves that problem. Try to lean into something like that as well. It's obvious that you're the person to solve this, that you had an issue in the AR/VR space that you know is an actual issue, and you validated it with other kind of companies or stakeholders, and they're saying everyone is saying the same thing. So you're coming in with a solution that you know is needed, that you validate that is needed, and that you have it yourself, and that's what you're doing it. And I think that will resonate again with customers, investors, with everyone around you, that you are really doing it for the right reason.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Alon, it was great having you on the All Things XR podcast again. Thank you very much.
Definitely. Thank you so much for the invite. So good to be here again. And really, really appreciate your work and kind of pushing the AR, VR, XR industry forward through this podcast.
Thanks very much.